welcome back to a little episode of Mozzy Sails. We're fresh off a weekend of racing for SailGP in Bermuda. Absolutely electrifying first weekend, lots of stuff to talk about. But from the tech side, one of the big changes for the 2021 season, season 2 of SailGP, is the new wing sails. Along to chat to me today, I've got Paul Campbell-James, also known as CJ, who has probably the most experience of kind of these AC50/F50 wing sails, involved in the development and now also trimming main on Team USA. So welcome to the channel, CJ.
Nice having me.
No worries, it's an absolute pleasure. Before we get into the details of these new wing sails, because I do want to dive into technicalities there, but obviously you involved, just for background for the viewers, you were involved with BAR wing trimmer there, so on the original AC50s as they were kind of America's Cup class. Stepped away from the sport for a little while, or from the kind of pro circuits that we see on screen, and then you came back. You had a cameo with the Chinese team. I've also heard you were the guy who was driving the boat for the Tenet movie as well, so a little bit of sailing there. And then fresh for this season after COVID, you're in it full time. So what's brought you back to this to the SailGP circuit, and why did you leave us?
Well, I never really left. I just I didn't have an opportunity, to be honest, to start the first season. There was a really heavy push to get young guys in, and I guess I just didn't quite make the cut of young anymore. And then, I watched the first couple of events, and I worked on the TV side. So I was directing the directors, I guess, to make sure they always got the right shots. So that was in London. So I did the first two from the booth in London, and then, just a mate of mine, Ed Paris, basically called me up, and he was the wing trimmer for the Chinese, and they were having a bit of a hard time. So I went and basically to help Ed in New York. And then after New York, Phil Robertson was basically given the ultimatum that they had to perform or get thrown out.
Wow.
And having obviously sailed or coached with Phil in that New York regatta, he kind of said, any chance you could just come sailing with us instead of coaching for New York? For Cowes. So we arrived in Cowes, and it was, as you can remember, like the most ridiculously windy event. And it was my first time in the kind of modified F50s. So, we approached that regatta with a very safe mentality, which kind of showed with all the younger guys in there. Everyone just pushed really hard on that windy day. And I took it more of a 49er style background where, first to finish first you must finish. So we sailed pretty conservatively and ended up coming third in that regatta, which, was a fantastic result for the Chinese, and kept them in line to carry on. We then did the Marseille event and came third in that one as well. And then we got to the winter, and then Russell basically made the decision to swap from the Chinese team to the Spanish team. And there's a rule in SailGP that says the developing nations, which Chinese were one of those, could have 3 foreigners for the first year and 2 foreigners for the second year. But the Spanish, not being a developing nation, they're only allowed 1 foreigner on board. So I then coached the Spanish team, having done all the testing on this new wing, as you alluded to, in New Zealand. I then coached the Spanish team, and then they were fourth in Sydney. And then again, there was a team struggling, which was the French, after Sydney. So I basically got the call up to sail with the French for the rest of last year's season. And I kind of, I saw myself as the guy that basically got put on to try and help the teams, which was a strange position to be in. But so I signed with the French, and then obviously COVID came, nothing happened. And I was all set up for sailing with the French again this year. And then just before the America's Cup, I got a call from Jimmy Spittle, the man himself, and there wasn't an opportunity I was going to turn down, and there we are.
Cool. So in fact, it's not like you ever gone away. You're more like a Paul Scholes. You took a step back to do the coaching behind the scenes, but then were called back onto the pitch to help the chase for the championship rather than.
I was the doctor.
Before we hit the technical details, the key part of your weekend was boat on boat action. You guys on starboard had Team Japan. They looked like they'd seen you for a little way off, but were undecided about whether to duck or tack. Made a late tack call, and it wasn't a crash tack. It was just a nice swooping tack, landing perfectly on your leeward hull. What obviously completely wrecked your weekend. How does that feel as a team? And do you think it's fair as well? Because you actually finished below Japan in the leaderboard as well for the weekend after that event.
Yeah. So I mean, we didn't have the best of Saturdays. We ended up being fourth in the results, but we felt like we didn't really sail very well. We got bad starts, and we slowly came through the fleet, but I didn't think our setup was as good as we could be. So, again, Sunday we go into it. We didn't get the best of starts, but having rounded the reach mark in sixth, we were already up to third by the bottom mark. So we felt like we were charging. We're really confident that we could get into that final three race. So we crossed most of the way to the right, tacked in, and coming across on starboard. And literally the next thing we knew, I was flat on my face on the trampoline. We saw the Kiwis crossing us, and then we literally never saw the Japanese, because there's a really big blind spot in these boats, just where you would get a port starboard. And obviously when you're on port, you're looking down there to make sure no one's coming, and to try and avoid anything. And we just literally didn't see them. Obviously watching the incident afterwards, you see when we crashed, none of us are even braced. We're not like ready for impact. We just get thrown because we didn't see him there. Watching their video, obviously there was a bit of indecision. Having spoken to Chris a bit afterwards, because it's the first time we're using the little wings, everyone was amazed at the acceleration of them. So we obviously did a reasonably good tack, and then just accelerated up to 35 knots, way faster than they were expecting us to. So they kind of thought they were crossing, and then with our good acceleration, they changed their mind and were like, too late to duck, so we've got to tack here. But as you say, we were a little disappointed, having watched their video, that they didn't just crash tack. They kind of waited for the board to go down and everything. But I think that there was a little bit on their part that they thought we'd seen them, and they thought we were going to avoid a little more than we did. But the fact that we didn't see them, it was. I mean, he probably could have turned faster, but.
Well, cracking weekends racing anyway. Shame how it finished up for you, but it was great to see the boats on the water and the interaction, and 8 boats was just completely mental, but it's almost like sensory overload watching it.
Then you see the boys doing 95 kilometers now, which is like 52 knots around the first bearway, and we touched 90 something in the practice reach. So, I mean, it's insane how these things are going.
Right, well, I mean, we're just talking about speeds then, and it's probably worth going on to talk about the new wings which were developed. Just as a bit of background for people, the first seasons of SailGP, the wings were from a mixture of the Artemis wings from the previous America's Cup, and then the Team Japan and Oracle wings, which were all of the same design as well, I believe. And they were a kind of a set area, set shape, all one design. Externally, internally, mechanics were a bit different. So we had Dylan on, and he was talking about how they were kind of a bit limited in terms of the software to limit the shape, so that they functioned as a one design, even though they weren't one design in mechanism. So SailGP, big thing is lots of different venues. It's not an America's Cup where you've got one area to design for. You need to be racing across the range, so it's kind of like an obvious progression to bring in some kind of modularity to the wings to operate in more wing conditions. But also Dylan was talking about other factors in terms of wing twist, how they worked mechanically, some performance elements around there, and obviously increased speeds, and then you've got all the kind of like logistic elements of it. So there's lots of different design criteria being thrown into this pot compared to America's Cup. You were brought on to do some of the wing testing. So I think the first thing I want to ask is, how does that development process go, and how do you trade off those elements? Were you involved in those other areas, or were you just the guy who tells them whether it goes fast?
No, I was like the latter that you just said. Basically, the wings had been pretty much developed by the time I got there. So there had been a discussion before I was involved about the design features of these wings. Now, they then needed the wing. They needed some good feedback once the boats were on the water to make sure that before they built, they basically had one on the water with another one in build, and they needed to build 6 more after that. So, they needed wing 1, which ended up being the Spanish wing. They needed that wing to be tested and to make sure it all worked effectively. And then there's a lot of hydraulic systems in there that they needed to push to the limits to make sure if they blow up, they were going to blow up in the right way. And so I was there as the kind of test pilot with my Chinese team at the time, and we then did a full month in New Zealand testing these things, and we then, as you say, we put a small one up as well, and didn't decide on wing limits, but we decided what configurations would be best at what times, whether the jibs were the right sizes to go with them, and everything like that.
And so just to describe, because obviously the people watching will have no or very little experience trimming solid wings, what is the difference in terms of the mechanics of how you're operating these wings to the Oracle and Artemis wings that you've used before, and BAR as well?
So, I mean, the old wings were, as you say, Oracle, Japan, and Artemis. And Oracle in Japan had the one control system inside the wing, which effectively was like a seesaw. And in the tack, they called it the table, seesaw, right? And that seesaw, if you can imagine, one side of the seesaw had cables attached to one side of the control arm, and the other side had them to the other side of the control arm. When they tacked, the whole wing would tack from side to side. Artemis had a different system that worked in a similar way, but they're all very limited. Okay, so it was all based around the America's Cup rule at the time. Now, if you get rid of that America's Cup rule, the main point of that Cup rule was they wanted it to be a mechanical system. They didn't want it to be a hydraulic system. They wanted you to, when you press a button, if you wanted the wing to go to, say, 20 degrees of camber, you had to press the button until it went to 20 degrees of camber and let it go. You couldn't just go press one button and it goes to 20 degrees of camber. It's got to be, so it's got to be simple, effectively. Anyway, if you get rid of that rule, you would design the wing totally differently. And that's exactly what they did. So they've now got rid of that rule, and on each of the levels, rather than having, we call it the boomerang, but rather than there being a control arm with 2 sides with strings attached to those 2 sides, now all they've got is imagine a triangle shape with a push-pull ram on one side. So one side of the wing is totally clean, with no control arms. The other side of the wing has got a kind of triangle out the side of it with a ram attached. Now, if you wanted to go on starboard, that ram would pull in, and if you want to go on port, that ram would extend. And that's how you get your camber in the wing. Now, so the old system was all the levels were kind of linked within the control system and the cables at the bottom. Now, those cables all stretched differently, and you had to be very precise with the structure that you built the wing. So although the wings were the same shape, it was very dependent on how soft or how stiff you made the wing, which influenced how much tension was in all those cables, which had a load of other effects as well. So now we've got rid of all of that. And then the biggest advantage is all those flaps are controlled independently, but at the bottom we've got one control that controls them however we want them to be controlled. But with these wings, you go negative cambers at the top. So if you imagine your sailing wing, or your sail, your main sail, you go deep at the bottom and you then blade it off at the top and flatten it off at the top. So 49ers, for example, you get a little fluttering at the top, but it never goes negative. because it just flaps in the middle. Where these wings, you can go massively negative at the top to give you more side force. Okay, so you think that the wing always heels. You've got the same amount of heeling moment with every setup, and that heeling moment's enough just to lift the hull out of the water. Now, if you want to move the center of effort down on a wing that you can go negative at the top, you can move it down really, really far because you can make the top push in the opposite direction. Okay, so we've got that control of these new wings that we can go massively negative at the top and not influence any other part of the boat. Where the old wing, you were either driven off the main sheet, which is what BAR had, the main sheet connected to the top arm to pull it negative, or with the Oracle and Artemis wings, they had it connected off level 2. So the level 1's the bottom, level 2's the second one up, and that force then drove the negative at the top. So in kind of to keep it a bit more simple, you can get more twist. And going negative on the cambers has no effect on any other level. So you can go massively negative if you want to. Now the old wings, we could get around about 35 to 40 degrees of twist if you had all the settings correctly put together. If you weren't with the right settings, for example, if you're using upwind cambers, you could probably only get 25 degrees of twist. Okay, so it's really limited. Where these new wings, they can go up to 60 degrees, right? So it's a ridiculous amount of twist and you don't need that much. But the good thing about it is if you can get that much twist, you can put the wing in lots of different shapes. Okay, so you could have 40 degrees of twist, which is the way most of us set the wing up, but you can have lots of that twist at the top and stand up the bottom. So if you imagine a 470 main, they try and keep the leech stood up and then they twist off at the top, keep that center of effort down. But we can do that with this new wing because we can keep the bottom straight and then twist off a lot at the top. Okay, so we just got a few more options on what to do with that wing. The other thing they did was they shortened the chord a little bit, so the leech was far back. Now, the advantage of this is the wing sheet is a lot less loaded. Okay, so you can move the wing sheet easier. And because of the twist system, because it's hydraulic and it's very efficient, you can twist very quickly. Okay, so actually, where the old wings, the twist was kind of inefficient because you're moving pulleys and stretching ropes and whatever. Yeah. So you did most of the control using the sheet and the grinders. Now with these new wings, it's more like 60-40 with twist and 40% of sheet movement. So for our team, for example, because I'd done all the testing and I realized that, and when we did the testing, we actually managed to do 2 full dry laps, so not touching down at all, with only 3 people on board, so no grinders at all.
Wow.
using twist and keeping them in the middle. Yeah, so I kind of realized that it was going to be a bit of a different story for the grinders. So, and on our team, we've set it up so actually the forward-facing grinder is our tactician. Yeah. Okay, where all the other teams, because they hadn't used the wings before, they've all got 2 massive dudes turning the handles who spend the whole time sitting down now or on their knees now, you know. So I wouldn't be surprised to see some of the teams changing a little bit and going more towards a tactician.
That's really interesting as well, because Dylan was saying, you know, one of the areas he thought there was maybe a slight physical advantage was in loading your afterguard with bigger blokes to get weight over the rudder for a bit of more rudder differential and righting moment. And he was saying they couldn't do that with the initial GBR team. They had obviously Matt Gottrell, Neil Hunter, 2 huge guys in the front of the boat, and Dylan, Chris Draper, reasonably small chaps. So they had their weight back to front. But, you know, it does open it up to have some potentially small athletes in the front of the boat. And maybe even some of the female athletes, you maybe not completely rule them off being on the pedestals, you know, if they're smaller than the blokes. Definitely, and yeah, I mean, if you could put, Hannah Mills is probably a little small. You know, she was with the British team, probably be set up better for a tactician behind Ben. Yeah, but you could get a forward-facing grinder with a big guy facing R to make up for those moments when you do need the power. And
Yeah, I'm not sure that was originally what the wings were meant for and really designed around, but it's a result of the way they have been built.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's one disadvantage to having no sheet load, and I don't know if you saw the Australian crash, the Australian capsize. Now, if you put too much twist in the wing, the sheet doesn't load at all.
Yeah.
So there's more force rotating the wing back to the center line than it is letting it out. Okay, so you've got to be pretty careful, and especially on the small wings, you've got to be very careful to make sure that you've always got some sheet load. Now, the results, obviously, imagine the roundup when you can't let the main out. The results are pretty obvious, and obviously the Australians found that in the practicing, and everyone was pretty conscious of it on Sunday in Bermuda, and you could see some of the roundups at the bottom where people were 49er style. Dropping the wood hull in before rounding up to make sure that you didn't round up with any heel on.
Yeah.
So that's definitely a factor of this wing.
Well, that was one of the things that struck me about the Australian capsize in the Team USA boat. When I saw the stern cam footage, I was like, "What idiot is sheeting on?"
Yeah.
in the capsize, you see them heeling, and the sheet's just coming. Well, it looks like the sheet's coming on. Obviously, the sheet isn't, but the wing is coming into the centre line. So is that centre of effort thing in play?
Yeah, exactly. So that's just it. Just causes a moment that actually there's so much area in front of the wing, in front of the mast ball. Sorry.
Yeah.
That is straightening the wing and sheeting it on. That if you don't have enough force behind that mast ball, it will sheet on. Okay, so yeah, you just got to be a bit careful. And it's an interesting part of this wing that previously no one really had thought about enough. But it's made it really interesting, and the fact that the grinding is a lot less physical, and there's a few times when you can get caught out. But yeah, it makes it more interesting.
You've said the new larger wings are coming in for the next event in Italy, which could be good with light winds potentially in the Med. Do you see potential for these? I'm always a little bit skeptical of bringing the wind range down too low, because often my perception is it's not always just having enough power to race, it's the stability of the wind. Once it drops, kind of below 7-8 knots, it gets hard to get a course in. Do you think it'll be good for the racing? You'll be able to get foiling potentially, but will it be good racing with the big rigs?
I've no idea. No one's used those big wings yet. At the moment, the boats can foil in about 7.5 knots. If they can even bring that down to 5 knots, then that's a big difference, because then you're racing in 3 to 7 knots and having a good race. Where at the moment, anything below 7 knots, we are downwind. You can't fly one hull. You're 2 hulls in, going at 8-9 knots downwind in 7 knots of breeze. And then as soon as it gets to 7.5 knots of breeze, you come up and you can do 28. Like the difference between 7 and 7.5 knots is triple the boat speed. It's massive difference. So even if they can get the hulls popping in 5 knots, that would be a big achievement. It's quite the undertaking for the shore team to get these things up. You need a bigger crane, things like that. I mean, it's 29 meters. This thing is the biggest wing since the AC-72s. It's going to be huge. I actually really like the small wing because the angles downwind were a bit wider. The boat was ridiculously fast with the thing up. Only 2 teams had used the small wing prior to that day. So you think if everyone looked a bit ropey, it's because it was literally their first time out.
Yeah.
The Brits had never used it and obviously sailed pretty well. The Australians used it for 20 minutes in our boat and capsized. I hadn't used it since New Zealand in 2019, and the Japanese never used it. So you think of those 4 teams.
Yeah. Before I let you go, what are your ambitions, or the team's ambitions for this season? Where do you see kind of like a par performance for the USA team?
The massive goal for the US team is to get into the top 3 for that final race, so then spin the dice from there. We obviously didn't have the greatest of first regattas, but this year's points are for positions, not for points. Mm-hmm. So we didn't lose a lot of points on the other teams. So if we come out and win in Italy, which I think is achievable, then we'll be in good shape. Yeah, and actually, we've only got to be in the top 3 before that final. It's not like you need to be winning. You can be winning. As Tom Slingsby showed, he won 4 out of 5 races going into that final race, but didn't win overall. So.
Right, well that's awesome. Thank you very much for your time, and good luck in the rest of the season. I'll see if I can catch up with you in Plymouth when they're down that way. I think we're going to be open a bit more with COVID then, so it should be a bit more of a nicer experience around the dock as well than Bermuda's not a bad place to be, but better than being locked up, I guess. So yeah, fingers crossed.
No, it'll be good to see some crowds down in Plymouth. It'll be the first sporting event for a long time that we'll be able to have some. So yeah, looking forward to that. Yeah. A few USA flags wouldn't go amiss.
Nice. Well, take care. I'll let you get off, and thank you very much again for your time.
Cheers, Tom.
Cheers. Take care. Bye.